Contrary to popular prejudice, tieflings aren't infernal creatures, nor are they inherently evil or even predisposed towards evil. However, this perception of them as evil leads others to treat them as if they were. The suspicion of others can lead them to being distrusted, persecuted, and abused. This can lead them to a life of crime or acts of desperation that add to the evil reputation tieflings have. This evil reputation also draws the attention of actually evil individuals who wish to exploit the tiefling's natural power. This is the story of one such tiefling who escaped from her persecutors and got her revenge. Hi everyone, and welcome to another inspiring episode of The Dungeon Crashers. I'm Guy.
And I'm Zapil. Today we continue our band of tiefling adventurers with our representative of the line of Levistus. Before we get started, remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our exciting D&D content. Levistus tiefling have the standard tiefling traits. They are medium-sized and have a movement of 30 feet, dark vision out to 60 feet, and can speak common and infernal. They have a +2 bonus to charisma. Tieflings of the line of Levistus also have a +1 bonus to constitution, and they have the legacy of Stygia. It gives them the Ray of Frost cantrip. At 3rd level, they gain the ability to cast Armor of Agathis, and at 5th level, they gain the ability to cast Darkness. They can use these spells once per long rest. Rules is written, they don't know these spells and can't cast them with their spell slots. We ignore this in our game, but talk to your DM about it. For ability scores, we use the point buy system, and this character needs multiple ability scores to be high. Charisma is the most important stat, but we also need strength for multi-classing, dexterity to use medium armor effectively, constitution for hit points, and we don't want to completely neglect wisdom, so like many paladins, this is not going to be an intelligent person. We put a 13 on strength because that is the minimum for multi-classing, and it will be useful if she has to attack with something other than her Pact weapons. We put a 14 on dexterity for the best armor class we can get with breastplate. We put a 13 on constitution, which will be 14 after the racial bonus. We put a 9 on intelligence. 8 would be fine, but we have a spare point, so we put it on intelligence. We put a 10 on wisdom, which is lower than we would like, but we have proficiency with wisdom saves and will eventually get our aura protection to help with the saves. And we put a 14 on charisma, making it 16 with the +2 racial bonus. Charisma is going to be our casting stat and our main attacking stat, so it needs to be high.
Our hero begins her life in a difficult spot. Her mother was ostracized for her tiefling heritage and lived in poverty, making her living through petty thievery and prostitution. Her daughter would likely have suffered the same fate if someone hadn't planned a worse one for her. A demon-worshipping cult learned of her existence and thought she would make a good host for the demon they worshipped. The cult offered our hero's mother gold in exchange for the child, telling her they were going to give the child a better life. For a time it seemed they kept their word. The girl was raised in the cult leader's home and given every luxury. As they needed a strong host for the demon, she was trained in the arts of war. The priests of the cult educated her and saw to her welfare, awaiting the day when the girl was grown and the demon would possess her body. This would have been her fate, but a force reached out to her. It said its name was Cloudpiercer, and it was a Hexblade, one of the 7 weapons of legend. It told her the truth of what the cult intended, and offered her the means to escape if she would swear a pact with it and seek out its earthly form. Although she was suspicious at first, since the cultists had been kind to her, but the being was persuasive and told her many things that led her to question her benefactor's motives, and eventually she agreed. She felt herself flooded with power. Her weapons training had made her strong for her size, but now she felt as if she had the strength of a large man. Energy crackled from her fingers at her command, and she could conjure shields of force to defend her from harm. In the following days she learned to master these powers and more. Under the cover of night she fled the manor that had been her home for a decade, taking with her the armor and weapons she had trained with, a small satchel of food and some coins. Her first thought was to find her mother, and her patron expressed no objection, so she returned to the town of her childhood, a keep on the borders of the kingdom. There isn't a background that suits this character, so we're making our own and calling it the Cultist background. It gives the skills religion and the player's choice of deception, stealth, or intimidation, and we're choosing stealth. And 2 languages of her choice. The Cultist taught her to speak Elvish and Undercommon, which is a trade language spoken in the Underdark. The feature of this background is called Initiated. It lets her identify the symbols and gestures used by members of the cult and to find locations where the cultists meet. At first level, she begins as a first-level Warlock. She gains 2 skills from their list and takes proficiency in Arcana and Intimidation. She gets proficiency in simple weapons and light armor, as well as Wisdom and Charisma saves. First level warlocks choose a patron, and hers is the Hexblade. Now, as a DM, I don't really like the Hexblade patron. Not because of the class features, which are cool, although the Spectre seems kind of random. What I dislike is the flavor of it. Your patron is a sentient weapon with no particular history or lore, except maybe it has something to do with the Raven Queen. It just doesn't make a good story, so I try to add my own flavor and lore to it. So her patron is a particular weapon that has an incarnation in the mortal realm, and it makes pacts with people in hopes that one of them will become strong enough to free it and become its wielder. There are a number of these weapons that all have their own goals and stories, and are often at odds with one another. This obviously has nothing to do with anyone else's campaign, but it works for our story. Hexblade warlocks get abilities that make them better at melee combat. First is Hex Warrior. It gives proficiency with medium armor, martial weapons, and shields, and after each long rest they can choose one weapon that lacks the two-handed property to focus their power into, and can use their charisma modifier for attack and damage with that weapon. If they gain Pact of the Blade, they can also use this ability with any of their Pact weapons, even if they are two-handed. Our hero doesn't want disadvantage on stealth, so she begins play with a chain shirt and will upgrade to breastplate as soon as possible. Since she wants a hand free for spellcasting and wants to use her weapon two-handed, she forgoes a shield. Her patron is a glaive, but she currently can't use that with the Hex Warrior ability, so she starts with a spear, using it two-handed with the versatile property for extra damage. She also gains Hexblade's Curse. Once every short or long rest, she can curse a target for 1 minute. While the target is cursed, she gains a bonus on damage rolls against the target equal to her proficiency modifier. She scores a critical hit on the target on a 19 or 20, and if the target dies, she gains hit points equal to her warlock level plus her charisma modifier. All warlocks gain Pact magic. She gains a single first level spell slot and will gain more at higher levels, but never many. But these slots do recover on a short or long rest. These spell slots become higher level as she gets the ability to learn higher level spells. She learns 2 cantrips and 2 first level spells from the warlock list, and as a Hexblade, the spells Shield and Wrathful Smite count as if they were on the warlock list for her. For cantrips, she takes Eldritch Blast. Hexblades may be built for melee, but Eldritch Blast is still a powerful cantrip, and sometimes range attacks are necessary. Her other cantrip is Booming Blade. When casting it, she makes a melee attack against the target. If it hits the target, it is shrouded in thunderous energy, and if it moves before the start of her next turn, it takes 1d8 thunder damage. For spells, she takes Shield, because anyone who can take Shield should, especially if they're going to be in melee. She also takes Hex. This allows her to curse a target, and it takes an additional d6 damage for every attack she hits it with, including spells that have a roll to hit. And the cursed target has a disadvantage on checks with an ability score of her choice. Warlocks can also use an arcane focus instead of a component pouch when casting their spells. The casting ability for her spells is Charisma. Her spell attack is Charisma plus Proficiency modifier, and the save DC for her spells is 8 plus Proficiency and Charisma modifiers. Upon arriving at the keep, she seeks to find her mother. When she was sold to the cult, she was very sad, but her mother told her that they would give her a better life, and when she was older, she could come back home. She never forgot this, and now she has returned, but her old home is gone, and no one knows of her mother. For weeks, she searches in vain before coming across an old beggar who sometimes shared the boarding house they lived in. He recognized her despite the years that had passed, and informed her that after she had left, her mother was found robbed and murdered. Witnesses say it was a group of black-robed figures, but the authorities never investigated. Instantly, our hero knew it was the cult, and she vowed to seek them out. While searching for any sign of their secret meeting places, she found herself being followed by a shadowy figure that always remained just out of sight. Believing it to be an agent of the cult, she prepared an ambush and caught her pursuer unaware. To her surprise, the figure was a tiefling like herself, and during their battle she found that her opponent thought she was a cultist. Declaring a truce, they discussed the situation and found that they were both victims of the cult, and were both seeking vengeance, so they banded together to seek them out.
At second level, she becomes a second level warlock, gaining Eldritch Invocations, which are powers granted to her by her patron. She gains 2 of these, and the first she chooses is Agonizing Blast, allowing her to add her Charisma modifier to the damage of each of her Eldritch Blasts. And for the second, she takes Devil's Sight, allowing her to see through any darkness, even that created by magic. She also gets a second first level spell slot and learns another first level spell, and she takes Armor of Agathis. She already gets it 1 free casting from her Legacy of Stygia, but she may want it more than once. If your DM allows you to cast racial spells with your spell slots, take something else instead, like Hellish Rebuke. She and her new ally go to seek lodging in the local inn. Shortly after arriving, they are confronted by another pair of tiefling women. a very unusual situation. One of the women seems rather innocent and impulsive and rushes to introduce herself. Despite the oddity of the situation, the woman is quite charming and persuasive and convinces the pair to join them for a drink. The situation gets even stranger when they discover that their new friends are seeking a place called the Cave of Chaos. She knows that name from the time in the cult and knows it is important to them. After some discussion, the four decide to band together and seek these caves. At 3rd level, she becomes a 3rd level of Warlock, and she gains a Pact boon. There are a number of boons available, but the one that she receives is the Pact of the Blade. It allows her to summon a magical melee weapon into her hand, which she can also dismiss at will. It can be any type of melee weapon, and she can use her Hex Warrior ability with it, even if it is two-handed, so she summons a glaive. Not only does this better reflect her patron, it gives her added reach and damage. Also, if she finds a magical weapon, she knows how to perform the ritual to turn it into her Pact weapon, and she can summon or dismiss it as well. Her spell slots become 2nd level, and she can learn another spell that can be of 2nd level. As a Hexblade, her spells Blur and Branding Smite are treated as if they are on the Warlock list for her. Both are useful spells, but require concentration, which limits her ability to use Hex. Instead, she chooses Mirror Image, as it is a powerful defense that doesn't use her concentration. At 4th level, she becomes a 4th level Warlock, getting an ability score improvement or a feat, and she takes the Polearm Master feat. When taking the attack action with a glaive, halberd, spear, or quarterstaff, she can use her bonus action to make an attack with the haft of the weapon, dealing 1d4 bludgeoning damage. Also, if the weapon has reach, such as her glaive, she can make an attack of opportunity against the creature entering her reach. She also learns another 2nd level spell, and she chooses Misty Step for a short-range teleport, allowing her to pursue enemies or gain a better position on the battlefield. She also learns another cantrip and takes Lightning Lure, allowing her to attack a target within 15 feet. If it fails the strength save, it is pulled 10 feet closer to her, and it takes 1d8 lightning damage if it ends up within 5 feet of her. At 5th level, she becomes a 5th level Warlock and learns another Invocation, and she takes Thirsting Blade, which allows her to attack twice with her Pact weapon instead of once when she takes the attack action. Her spell slots become 3rd level, and she can learn another spell that can be of 3rd level, and she chooses Spirit Shroud. For 1 minute, depending on concentration, any attack she makes deals an additional d8 of damage that can be necrotic, radiant, or cold. Creatures that take this damage are unable to regain hit points until the start of her next turn, and she can have any creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of her have its movement speed reduced by 10 feet. Also, as her spell slots become higher level, the damage from Spirit Shroud increases by 1d8 for every 2 levels higher than the third the slot uses. She could retrain Hex for a different spell, since this serves a similar purpose, but Hex has a better duration and can be used against creatures farther away, so it is probably better to keep Hex and choose which one to use depending on the situation. Her cancers improve here. Lightning Lure now deals 2d8 damage, Booming Blade deals 1d8 when hitting a target and 2d8 if they move, and she has 2 beams with her Eldritch Blast. Her Legacy of Stygia gives her the ability to cast darkness once per day at this level, and her Devil's Sights lets her see through the magical darkness, so she can fight enemies under the cover of darkness without them being able to see her in return. But it's important to remember that her allies might not be able to see through the darkness either.
As she and her companions set out to invade the Caves of Chaos, she is overcome with a desire for vengeance. The cult that slew her mother and attempted to make her a slave to a demon could be inside, and she wished nothing more than to destroy them. To this end, she asked her patron for more power, and it agrees, but in return it asks for her to swear an oath to devote herself to the pursuit of its goals beyond what was agreed to in their pact. She does so without hesitation and is imbued with more power. At 6th level, she becomes a 1st level Paladin. She gets Divine Sense, a number of times per day equal to 1 plus her Charisma modifier. She can use an action to detect celestials, fiends, or undead within 60 feet that aren't behind total cover, and also can detect consecrated or desecrated areas. This is often just a flavor ability, as if there is a fiend, celestial, or undead within 60 feet and not behind total cover, you usually know it's there. This isn't even overly useful at detecting invisible enemies, because while it lets you know they are there, you can't actually see them. It's better than nothing, though. Sometimes it does come in handy. In a recent campaign of ours, the party's paladin was able to detect that an NPC and his bodyguards were undead, and that they were carrying a desecrated item. She also gets Lay on Hands, which is a pool of healing equal to 5 times her paladin level, and she can use an action to touch a creature and heal them as many hit points from the pool as she wants. She can also spend 5 of those points to cure a disease or neutralize a poison affecting the creature. Along with her new companion, she invades the Caves of Chaos, fighting her way through hordes of goblins, bugbear, hobgoblins, and ogres, before finally confronting the cultist. These aren't the ones that attempted to give her to a demon, but they may be the ones who slew her mother. She didn't pause to ask, wading into the fray, slaughtering them with her glaive or bursts of power from her hands. When the last cultist lies dead, her companions shake her out of her battle trance. While she catches her breath and recovers her calm, her companions search the cultist shrine, finding gold and jewels, as well as an artifact that her senses tell her is pure evil. The young woman, who is a monk in service of a goddess of good and tranquility, tells the companions that this is a relic consecrated to the demon goddess Loth. The young woman that first greeted them, an archer and scholar, says that she knows something about cursed artifacts, and that it would be best if it were destroyed, or if that's not possible, sealed away in a temple to a righteous god. At 7th level, she becomes a 2nd level paladin. She gains a fighting style. She could take great weapon fighting, however it's not an optimal choice. When using a weapon such as a greatsword that uses 2d6 for damage, this can be very good. But a weapon like her glaives that uses a single large dice gets little benefit from it. Instead, she takes defense, giving her a +1 to armor class when wearing armor. She does not use a shield, and she avoids half-plate because it penalizes stealth. This will give her a welcome boost to her defense. She also gains spellcasting, gaining 2 first-level spell slots. Unlike her Pact magic, these slots recover only on a long rest, and she keeps track of them separately from her Pact magic slots. She can cast any spell she knows using either set of spell slots, so for spells like Hex and Shield that are fine when cast at first level, it might be better off using her Paladin spell slots. Unlike her Pact magic, she doesn't have spells known. Instead, she prepares her spells from the Paladin list. She can prepare a number of these equal to her Paladin level plus her Charisma modifier, so 4 for now. Command and Cure Wounds are both good spells to have that don't use concentration. The Smite spells do use concentration, but can be worth casting, but if possible, use them before casting Hex or Spirit Shroud. Instead of casting spells, she can spend her spell slots on Divine Smite. When she hits an opponent with an attack, she can spend a spell slot and deal an extra 1d8 radiant damage, plus an additional d8 for each level of the spell slot. She can do this with any spell slot she has, so using her 3rd level Pact magic slots would be very powerful, and recover on a short rest. Paladins can also use a Divine Focus instead of material components for their spells, and the focus can be incorporated into their weapon or shield. However, since she doesn't use a shield and her Pact weapon is a magical construct, she instead incorporates her Divine Focus into the same object she uses as her Arcane Focus. This would probably be acceptable rules as written, but since the same entity that granted her Pact magic also grants her Paladin spells, this shouldn't even be a roleplay problem.
After returning to the inn, they retire for much-needed rest, but are awoken by alarms. A horde of goblins are attacking the keep and rampaging through the streets. She quickly arms herself and runs out to the street to find her companions already engaging the foe. The battle is over quickly, with the defenders easily driving off the attackers. But when they return to the inn, the archer makes a terrible discovery. The relic had been stolen. The attack was a diversion to allow the thieves to sneak in and take it. Enraged, she vows to track down the thieves before they can take the artifact to another chapter of the cult, and she vows vengeance on the thieves and the cults they are working for. At 8th level, she becomes a 3rd level paladin. The oath she swore wasn't just idle promise. Her patron heard her vow, and she is bound to it, and in return, her patron grants her greater power. She becomes a paladin of the Oath of Vengeance. She gains 1 use of her channel divinity and 2 ways to use it. The first is Abjure Enemy. She chooses a foe within 60 feet, and unless it is immune to being frightened, it must make a wisdom saving throw or be frightened of her for 1 minute. And while it is frightened, its speed is 0, and it can't gain any bonuses to its speed. Fiends and undead have disadvantage on the save. This seems great. Frighten is a powerful effect, as is making a creature immobile, but its ability also ends if the creature takes any damage. This kind of ruins it. How are you supposed to take vengeance if you can't do damage? It's certainly not useless. It can be used to take one enemy out of a fight while you deal with the others, but she will probably want to use her second option, which is Vow of Enmity. She chooses a creature within 10 feet and gains advantage on attack rolls against it for 1 minute. This is great on its own, but could be devastating combined with her Hexblade's curse. She gains Divine Health, making her immune to disease, and she gains a 3rd first-level spell slot and gains O spells, which are always prepared and don't count against the number of spells she can't prepare. The one she gets at this level is Bane and Hunter's Mark. Bane can be a powerful thing to do, but it does require concentration. Hunter's Mark is less useful for her than Hag's, but it is always prepared and could come in handy in specific situations. The scholar of the group spends several days cloistered in libraries and consulting scholars and believes she knows where the goblins have taken the relic, and without hesitation, the companions set out to find them. Their destination is a steading belonging to a hill giant chieftain outside the borders of the kingdom. Although the journey is long, finding the fortress was simple. Giants aren't subtle, and the setting itself is huge. The companions decide to wait until late into the night to invade the keep, so they set up a small camp and rest from their travels. The archer finds a good vantage point and takes the first watch. Later that evening, she is awoken by her companions rising from their slumber. The archer has opened the tent and announced a guest. This should have been surprising, but even having known the young tiefling for only a short amount of time, our hero already knew her well enough not to be surprised by anything she does. The guest was another tiefling woman, but different. She was slight of build, but had great wings growing from her back. She also wore breastplate armor coated in a non-reflective black, and bore the holy symbol of the protector of the dead. This was a strange deity. Some of its worshippers were decent enough, keepers of graveyards and conductors of funerals, but often delved deep into foul necromancy. Hopefully this was one of the former. After some discussion, they discover that the woman is indeed not a servant of the evil, but belongs to an order that opposes tyranny and fights oppressors. While the order does not frown on necromancy, like most good folk, they don't create hordes of minions and avoid creating intelligent undead that would prey on mortals. Her order has heard a plot among the giants to cause great harm to the kingdom and has sent her to investigate. Seeing that they have a common cause and hearing the archers insisting that their meeting must be fate or the will of the gods, they include the newcomer in their group. At 9th level, she becomes a 4th level paladin, getting an ability score improvement in her feat, and she's going to increase her charisma to 18. Since this score affects so many of her abilities, it's important to keep it high. At 10th level, she becomes a 5th level paladin, getting extra attack. This is much better than her Thirsting Blade invocation because it will work with any weapon. Obviously, she prefers her Pact weapon, but situations might occur where she needs to use a dagger or even a bow, and she has a decent dexterity to use both of them with. She also gets 2 second-level spell slots and can prepare second-level spells. Lesser Restoration, General Riposte, and Prayer of Healing are all good spells to have and aid in a nice boost to survivability. She also gains 2 more Oath spells, Hold Person and Misty Step. Hold Person is a very powerful spell and is usually worth the concentration. She already has Misty Step as a Warlock spell, but we will retrain that later.
At 11th level, she becomes a 6th level paladin and gets her Aura of Protection. This is, in my opinion, one of the best reasons to be a paladin, right up there with Divine Smite. She and any allies within 10 feet add her charisma modifier to any saving throws they make. This is huge. A +4 bonus to a save is generally enough to make a difficult save into an easy one, and an easy one automatic. Her cantrips also improved now. Lightning Lure deals 3d8 damage. Booming Blade deals 2d8 damage when it hits and 3d8 if the target triggers the boom, and she has 3 beams with her Eldritch Blast. The heroes assault the giant's fortress, stealthily infiltrating it and fighting only when they must, but fighting viciously when the need arises. They make their way to the quarters of the hill giant chief. They find him asleep, but he is far from helpless. He grabs his arms and releases his pet, a huge cave bear. Without hesitation, she utters her vow of enmity and rushes into the fray. Ignoring the bear, she challenges the chief directly. Her companions enter the battle as well, each in their own fashion. The monk and rogue engage the cave bear, and the winged sorceress flies above and unleashes magic on the bear. The archer stands to the back, firing deadly arrows into the giant, at blinding speed. With her next breath, she lays her Hexblade's curse on the chieftain and lands powerful smites. Her allies seem to be having some small difficulty with the cave bear, but the archer shouts words of encouragement to fortify their will in battle. The chieftain lands some mighty blows on her, but she hardly notices as she calls her spirit shroud and brings him to his knees with another pair of powerful smites. She raises her glaive for the finishing blow, but the monk shouts, "Hold! Spare him!" Reluctantly, she stays her hand, but does not dismiss her spirit shroud. The archer comes forth and offers to spare the chieftain and his people if we return the artifact and forswear his plans against the human kingdom. The chieftain agrees, but claims to not have the artifact. The goblins fled with it as soon as they became aware of battle in the steading. He believes they fled north to his ally, the Jarl of the Frost Giants. Unable to give up the artifact, the giant gives him such information as he has and a fortune in jewels from his treasury, and the heroes set out for the northern ice in pursuit of the wretched thieves. At 12th level, her patron informs her that they are drawing nearer to the place he is imprisoned. He doesn't know his location, but he can feel her coming closer. She becomes a 6th level warlock. She can learn another spell of up to 3rd level, and she takes counterspell to thwart enemy spellcasters. She can also retrain a spell, and since she has Misty Step as an oath spell, now she will retrain it for the fly spell. Though it requires concentration, there are times when taking the battle to the sky is necessary. From her patron, she is granted the ability to conjure an accursed spectre. When she slays a humanoid, she can cause its soul to rise as a spectre that is bound to her service until she finishes her next long rest, at which point it vanishes into the afterlife. The spectre is created with temporary hit points equal to half her warlock level, and has a bonus to its attack rolls equal to her charisma modifier. She can also retrain one of her invocations, and she no longer needs Thirsting Blade, so she exchanges it for Witch Sight, further enhancing her supernatural vision, allowing her to see the true form of shape changers or creatures concealed by illusion or transmutation magic within 30 feet. Invisibility is illusion magic, so most invisible enemies won't be able to hide from her, and she should start preparing Branding Smite with her Paladin spells to mark these enemies for her allies. At 13th level, she becomes a 7th level Paladin. From Oath of Vengeance, she gains Relentless Avenger. Whenever she hits a creature with an opportunity attack, she can move up to half her speed without provoking opportunity attacks as part of the same action. For most Vengeance Paladins, this feature is a little underwhelming compared to the auras gained by other Paladins, but combined with Polearm Master, it becomes excellent. Polearm Master gives her an opportunity attack whenever an enemy enters her reach, and then with Relentless Avenger, she can move either to put herself in a better position or possibly even far enough that the enemy can't attack her. She also gains a 3rd 2nd level spell slot. The battle against the Frost Giants is far deadlier than the Hill Giant steading. The campaign lasts for weeks of hit-and-run tactics mixed with pitched battles, hopefully finding time to heal and recover their energy in between. The archer plays soothing melodies and tells heroic stories to help them rest, and uses a spell of recovery to help restore their powers. Ultimately, they face the Jarl in combat. The sorcerer unleashes terrible blasts of fire, overwhelming his minions, while the warriors engage the Jarl himself. He fights mercilessly, asking no quarter and offering none. She exhausts her power, dealing smite after smite, but it is the rogue who finally lays him low with a swift strike to the artery in his thigh. The monk wished to spare him, but the Jarl attacked any who came close as he bled out from the wound. The heroes searched in vain for the artifact, but found no sign of it or the goblin thieves. Among the giant's treasury, they found several items of magic, including a bag that could hold far more than it appeared, an enchanted bow, and a short sword that glowed with blue light. They also found an iron chain of unknown magic. The archer used a powerful divination and discovered that it could be used to form a gateway to a volcano where the fire giant king kept his hall. Believing the fire giants must also be in collusion with the cultists, and suspecting that the goblins had fled there with the artifact, the heroes formed the gate and passed through.
At 14th level, she becomes an 8th level paladin, gaining an ability score improvement or a feat, and she takes the Warcaster feat. It gives her advantage on concentration saves caused by taking damage, and she can perform the somatic components of spells even with weapons or a shield in each hand. Also, when a hostile creature's movement provokes an attack of opportunity from her, she can use her reaction to cast the spell at the creature rather than making an attack. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and only target that creature. With Polearm Master, creature's movement provokes attacks of opportunity when they enter her reach. She can then cast Booming Blade, targeting that creature, and use her Relentless Avenger ability to move out of the creature's reach, forcing it to move and trigger the Booming Blade if it wishes to attack her. At 15th level, she becomes a 7th level Warlock. Her Pact magic slots become 4th level, and she can now learn a 4th level spell, and she chooses Shadows of Moil. This spell causes her to be wreathed in shadow, granting her a number of effects. First, she becomes heavily obscured. Creatures are considered blinded in regards to trying to see her. This gives her advantage on attack rolls against them, and they have disadvantage on attack rolls against her, and they fail any ability check that involves seeing her. It also turns dim light within 10 feet into darkness and bright light in that area to dim light. Her Devil Sight means that she isn't hampered by darkness. It also gives her resistance to radiant damage, and when a creature within 10 feet hits her with an attack, the shadows lash out at that creature, dealing 2d8 necrotic damage. This requires concentration, but is definitely worth it. She is also granted another invocation and receives Eldritch Sight, letting her cast Detect Magic at will without using a spell slot, further augmenting her magical vision. At 16th level, she becomes an 8th level of Warlock, getting an ability score improvement or a feat, and she takes the Great Weapon Master feat. When she gets a critical hit with a melee weapon or reduces a creature to 0 hit points with one, she can make one melee weapon attack as a bonus action, and before she makes an attack with a weapon that has the heavy property that she is proficient with, she can subtract 5 from her attack roll and add 10 to the damage. This is almost always worth doing unless the target is very well armored. This would be especially powerful when she has advantage against an opponent, such as when using Darkness or Shadows of Moil. She learns another 4th level spell and chooses Blight. The one thing she is lacking is an Area of Effect spell attack, and this is a pretty good one. The Hall of the Fire Giant King was the greatest challenge the companions have faced so far. In addition to the giants, there were hellhounds and creatures of flame such as salamanders and elementals. The heroes are stretched to their limits, fighting ceaseless battle with little chance of rest. During those times between battle, as they moved stealthily through the hall, they found clues and information that the giants are in league with the drow of the Underdark, and the cultists are servants of the demon Lolth. Seeking the chambers of the king in hopes of ending this fight, they come across the great iron door. Believing it to be the king's chambers, they rush in ready for battle. She has shrouded herself in shadow in preparation. Inside the door, however, is no giant, but a huge red dragon that unleashes a fiery breath on them. Fortunately, the companions all share the resistance to fire from their fiendish ancestry, and the attack was not what the dragon expected. The sorceress unleashes a powerful onslaught, transforming her spells of destructive flame to equally devastating blasts of terrible cold, although the strain on doing so was clear. The archer unleashes a hail of arrows as the warriors ran to engage the beast. Blow after blow was struck, and our hero took many of them. Many times she was sent reeling to her knees, only for a word from the monk restoring her strength and sending her back into the fray. When the beast had finally fallen, the companions were near death themselves. The monk and the sorceress had exhausted much of their healing powers in the battle, leaving our hero and the archer to tend to the wounds as best they could. Risking being discovered, the companions hid themselves in the dragon's lair, hoping to get a good night's rest before continuing. By nothing less than a miracle, they remained undisturbed. After facing the dragon, the battle with the Fire Giant King seemed anticlimactic. The heroes bested him with relative ease and found no trace of the artifact or the thieving goblins. They did find that there is an entrance to the Underdark beneath this hall, and knowing that all of their goals seem to lead there, the heroes venture below. At 17th level, she becomes a 9th level Warlock. Her spell slots become 5th level, and she can learn a 5th level spell, and learn Synaptic Static, for another Area of Effect spell attack that deals psychic damage and hampers enemies. Her cancers improve for a final time. Lightning Lure now deals 48 damage, Booming Blade deals 3d8 extra damage to the target and 4d8 if they trigger the boom, and she has 4 beams with her Eldritch Blast. She gains another invocation and receives the power of a Ghostly Gaze, allowing her to see through solid objects at a range up to 30 feet. This ability requires concentration and lasts for 1 minute or until concentration is broken, and can't be used again until she finishes a short or long rest.
The heroes fight their way through the underground roads, leading deep into the Underdark. Many foul creatures oppose them, the worst of which was a vampire. He appeared to have been a dark elf in life, but was much stronger now, and alongside him was his lover, a demoness. The heroes faced the pair and their minions in battle, emerging victorious. They offered to spare the vampire in exchange for his assistance. Not wanting his immortal life cut short, the creature agrees. They tell the party that the goblins passed through bearing something that reeked of arcane power, and they bore the seal of Loth, granting them safe passage to the drow city below. The vampire and his demonic bride escort the party safely to the entrance to the drow city and depart with their bargain concluded and their lives intact. At 18th level, she becomes a 10th level Warlock. From her Hexblade patron, she is given Armor of Hexes. If the target of her Hexblade curse hits her with an attack, she can use her reaction to roll a d6, and on a roll of 4 or higher, the attack misses instead, regardless of the roll. She also learns another cantrip, and she chooses Thunderclap. It causes all creatures within 5 feet of her to make a Constitution save or take 4d6 thunder damage. At 19th level, she becomes an 11th level Warlock and gains a Mystic Arcanum, which is a 6th level spell that she can cast once per long rest without spending a spell slot, and she chooses Soul Cage. It lets her use her reaction to temporarily trap the soul of a creature as it dies. Then for the next 8 hours she can draw power or knowledge from the soul. The details are in the spell description in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. After 8 hours or after she has exploited the soul 6 times, it is freed and the spell ends. While the soul is trapped, its body cannot be returned from the dead. The drow city was a den of pure evil. The companions surprisingly drew little attention. Without the skills of the archer and sorceress, they might have wandered the city indefinitely, but her companions are adept at negotiations and investigations, and quickly discover who the goblins had fled to. But sadly, it was a matron of a great house, who was a powerful priestess of Loth. The companions used stealth as well as bribes and deception to get access to the matron and confront her, only to find that once again the goblins have escaped them and fled into the abyssal realm of Loth, taking the artifact with them. The companions vowed to continue their quest into the depths of the abyss, and in her mind her patron's voice tells her that she has almost reached it. At 20th level she becomes a 12th level warlock, getting a final ability score improvement in her feat, and she caps her charisma at 20, which improves most of her abilities. She receives a final invocation and receives the power of Life Drinker. When she hits a creature with her Pact weapon, it takes additional necrotic damage equal to her charisma modifier. This is one of the strongest martial characters we've made so far.
Yeah.
She can deal massive damage even without using smite. She has high-level spell slots for smiting that recover on a short rest, and she has a number of ways to add extra damage, prevent herself from taking damage, and give herself advantage on attacks. She also has some battlefield control with Booming Blade and Polar Master. At range, her Eldritch Blast is a powerful tool. Her weakness is hit points. While not low, it's less than a melee fighter should have. However, she's good at avoiding damage and also at killing enemies before they can do much to her. We hope you enjoyed this character and her story, and hope you'll join us next week when we build the party's rogue. Until then,
cheers.